Well, welcome back to Modeling Time with me, Brian Banna. This video is going to take a little bit of a different subject matter. All my videos have always been of building locomotives and such, but in the last almost 2 years I've been working on freight cars, and I haven't done very much with locomotives. The SD45s that I'm building, that's the first set of locomotives I've probably touched seriously in 2 years. I've been tinkering with some stuff, and I just haven't finished it. Although the orange and blue ones that you've seen on my desk here, I'm slowly working on those and getting them, to the stage where I want to get them done. But other things have taken precedence over that. So this video, I'm going to talk about or work on a freight car. I'm still working on the SD45 vigorously. I just finished washing and cleaning all the truck parts, so I need to move on from that, and I'll get a video of moving on with that very soon. So this freight car didn't take me very long. I think I started it Friday night and I finished it today, so that's modeling time. That's probably 2 days worth of modeling. So let me pull up on the screen here the freight car that I'm going to be modeling, and we'll discuss it a little bit. Now, this car, a friend of mine posted on the modern freight car list, and he wanted some information on it and stuff like that. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh man, I've got to have this car for my collection. So I'm building two of them. The decals are already done, and you've seen if you watched my last SD45 video, you've seen the decals. It's a Ko&G car. So, but I've got the prototype picture coming up, and we'll discuss it a little bit. And it was a really fun build. So I've got one done here. It just needs paint and decals, and we'll go over, or I'll go over how I built it, and we'll build this car. Now, this is an Atlas car. You might be wondering, why aren't you using a Katie car or something like that? So I need to go over that real quick. I don't do fine scale prototype modeling anymore. And to be quite honest with you, I got really bored with RPM. I didn't get bored with the people. The people are fantastic, and I really enjoyed talking with everybody, meeting people, and just having a good time. But modeling, it wasn't going anywhere for me. It just kept taking longer and longer and longer for me to get things done. So I took a break, and in that break I kind of reevaluated what I wanted to do with my modeling. And I've come back even stronger and more vigorous with what I want, and I'm happier doing this. I call it prototype representation. And I'm happier doing this than I ever was with fine scale prototype modeling. I don't even mind Fubies anymore. If I like them, they're going to be in my fleet. I've even built models of models. So what I mean by that is, when I started out with model railroading back in the early 70s, I think it was 72, Christmas of 72, I started out in N scale. So there's a lot of nostalgia there. So I've built some models of my N scale models, and I have those in my fleet. Currently I have 39 finished and weathered freight cars. That's not counting my 12 coal hopper fleet, but that's a different subject as well. So without yammering on anymore, let me pull up the photo. We'll discuss what the car is, and we'll move on with this build. Here I have a photo of the Ko&G hopper that I'll be building. I'll be building two hoppers. I'll be building this one, 022, and either 29 or 30. I'll make that decision when I get to the decaling part. Anyway, let me give credit first. The first line at the top is the home page for the website that this photo was found on. And the second line is the direct address of the page that this photo is on. Quite honestly, this website is pretty cool. It has some really neat pictures in it. So I do recommend you peruse it and look it over. It's pretty nice. So, first off, if you are modeling this car as a fine scale prototype, you need to make some notes of certain things, and I have some arrows to those things on this photo. First off, on the left, we do have an Ajax brake wheel. You can see that through the end cage there. No manufacturer makes a version of this car like this. And the most difficult part that you would have building is that shorter car end. It doesn't come down as far as it does on the Atlas model or the Ko&G model or the Bachmann model. So that's something you would have to tackle if you want to get really, really go into detail on this car. Next, the brake cylinder, the air reservoir is in line with the car. It's not perpendicular to the car like all the manufacturers are making their models. So those things you need to make note of. And on the right-hand side, the ladder rungs are straight. The ones that are represented on the models today from Atlas, from Ko&G, and from Bachmann is the left side of the rung is straight like you see, and the right side of the rung has a dog leg that goes up. So on this car, they would be straight across. And it wouldn't be hard to make because Tichy makes the rungs like that. So you just have to make sure that both ladder verticals are even, and then you can glue the Tichy rungs into the place. The 8-inch wide channels, they're evenly spaced across the car. So that's pretty much the car in general. Now, I do have the decals all done. They're at Highball Graphics right now, and they're getting produced. The little circle on the data in the right-hand corner, I had a really difficult time trying to figure what that was. But after staring at it for a while, I've come to the conclusion that it says HF composite pads applied, MK, then a date, and then RPKD, and then MPRR. So that's what I've concluded that those are. Now there is a photo of this car somewhere with an end view, but it's a distant end view, so there is some lettering on the end of the car, and I'm pretty sure that's probably just the spring and the wheels. So I used a generic spring and wheels for this type of car and put those on the decal sheet. Everything else I got. The nice thing about this photo is I could size it up so that 1/10 of an inch equals 1 inch. So that made it really easy to scale everything off this photo. Plus the car is a broadside, pretty much a perfect broadside view. So that takes care of the car. Now what I need to figure out is if these trucks were painted gray like the car or if they were painted black. I can't really tell from this photo. I do, like they said, there's a couple more photos of this out there, and they're color, or one of them is color, but it's a kind of distant photo, so I'll have to see if I can make that out from there. But in general, this is a car I'll be building, and you get an idea of what it looks like. Before I close on this photo, I want to thank Nathan Obermeyer for posting this on the Modern Freight Car List. As soon as I saw this photo, I was like, oh yes, I gotta have this car in my collection. So anyway, basically this is a car I'll be building, and I'll get started on modeling it. Now when I say I don't fine scale model anymore, prototype model anymore, I really don't. I've gotten rid of all of my high-end cars, all my Tangent cars, all my Genesis cars, all my Walthers Proto cars. I've got 11 tank cars I need to sell, and I'll probably just take those to the local hobby store and trade them in for some credit on something like that. I use now cars like the old AHM cars, the IHC cars, the Athearn ready-to-roll cars, the Walthers mainline cars, the Atlas trainman cars. Yeah, I like those cars. I found a new love for the hobby, turning those cars into something respectable. I mean, I've got this one here. I've got two of these here that I really am looking forward to stripping down and rebuilding and designing decals for. I have the containers coming for these cars. I've got the other calcium carbide car here. I need to figure out where the brake wheel's supposed to be and put that on it, but for the most part I got the containers coming for that car. I'll rebuild that car and stuff. All my cars have molded on grab irons, molded on ladders, molded on roof walks or one-piece roof walks and stuff like that. Some of the cars, like the Walthers mainline cars, they come with see-through roof walks, although they're a bit oversized. I like them. I like them a lot. And that's what I did with this car, is I used the Tichy roof walk, and I'll show you how I thinned it down and stuff like that. But it's glued on nice and solid. It's not going to pop off and such, although I did CA it down, but plastic takes the CA much better than the metal does, and it won't warp over time and such. So this is an Atlas Trainman car, and I like it a lot. It's probably one of my favorite freight cars, is not necessarily the Atlas car, but this style of freight car. But for some reason, I don't understand why it is when you get an undecorated car, the manufacturers feel they have to glue everything on it. These roof hatches are glued on, except for these two, which weren't in the box, so I had to scavenge them from another car. But looking in from underneath, they're glued on. And this was glued on, but it was glued on so poorly that it just popped off when I pulled the shell off. So the roof hatches are glued from the inside, if you can see the shininess in there. So, like I said, this is a Trainman car, and I'm going to turn it into something respectable. So I'll use Kato 70-ton trucks on it, and such. So, as you saw in the prototype picture, I need to remove these braces, or these hat sections, and I need to replace them with 8-inch channel. So I'll be cutting those off. I'll be putting the Tichy roof walk on here, and I'll be putting a Ko&G Ajax brake wheel on the end, and I'll be putting Ko&G couplers on, and I'll have to do a little bit of work on the bolster pins, because the Kato trucks don't just fit on where these go. So I have to take care of that. And the only other thing I'll do is I'll add the airline that goes around here to here, because one of my other cars, the Bowser cement hoppers, they have that. So I say, okay, they have it, so I'll put it on here. Now I will cut off these rope pulls, and I'll put on brass ones, and I will cut off these here, these stringers, and I'll put wire in there. I noticed on one of my cars that I did, an EJ&E hopper car, these were really nasty looking, and I was like, okay, I've got to do something about those. And I put wire on them, and boom, it just changed the whole look of the car. So just something like that was a really big plus for the car. And other than that, that's about it. But the first thing I'll do is I'll clean the parting lines off of these brake parts, because I need to glue this shell onto the frame, because when I put it in the mill to mill it, when I squeeze it, if this isn't glued on, it'll push up inside the shell a little bit and bow the shell out a little bit. So I don't want that. I don't put a lot of pressure. I don't have to in the vise. It's mostly just hand tight, but still hand tight still puts some pressure on the frame, and it pushes it in the shell and spreads the shell a little bit, which causes the milling bit to not go evenly over these ribs. So I'll get these brake parts cleaned up. I'll clean up any flash that there might be. On here I'll put 1 ounce extra of weight, ½ ounce on this side, ½ ounce on this side, and then I'll button it up, and we'll get to milling these off. So for these parts, it's real simple. Just take a sharp knife and go over all the parting lines. There's nothing special to show on that. The parting lines are visible. You can just clean them up, glue these back in place, and that part will be done. The couplers, isn't horn hooks coming back in style? Maybe I should keep these on here. Anyway, the coupler lids are press fit into here, so I'll just take those out and then put the lid back on, so when I grit blast everything, it'll be there and everything will be fine. When I put the Kato trucks on, I have to open the top of the truck hole a little bit, pinhole a little bit, and it'll fit right over the round boss on the Atlas frame, and it'll put the coupler at exactly the right height. So I'll show you all that I have to do here too, basically towards the end. So let me go ahead and get these cleaned up, these parts cleaned up. Let me clean up all the flash that might be on the ends here. Let me take this brake wheel off and toss it. Then we'll get this buttoned up. I'll show you the weights that I use and everything. Then we'll glue this on and we'll get to the real work of cutting all these off. Along with cutting these ribs off, or these hat sections off, I also have to sand down the, there's some weld lines, panel weld lines on the shell. Those have to go also. All right, now I have all these parts, brake parts cleaned up, all the flash is cleaned up, all the parting lines are cleaned up. Excuse me. On the bottom, I've cleaned up the parting lines, mold parting lines here and here and here, and same on the other side. I've glued in the bolsters, and I've added the additional ounce of weight. Before I put the weights on, I cleaned this area up underneath it with alcohol, and now I can tug on these and they're not coming out. Not at all. I had tried putting the weights on without cleaning up, and I could just pull them right off. There must have been some oil or something on them. So these aren't coming off anymore, so I don't have to worry about when I seal this thing up that they'll come off. Now when I put this shell back on, let me zoom in here. When I put the shell back on, this little actuator arm, there's a little notch in it. It needs to make sure, I need to make sure that it goes into this little clevis right here. I have to say one thing for Atlas, this piston on this brake cylinder is the best looking piston I've seen. So that's kind of interesting. Although I don't know if it's in the out position. I think it's supposed to be back in the in position, but anyway, it looks nice. So next thing I'll do is I will assemble this. Make sure that clevis, yep, clevis goes right in there. Now I will, the arm that's on the inside here, I'll put a little dab of glue up against this frame, and that'll lock it in place nicely. So when I do some weathering, it won't be flopping around. So the next thing I need to do is I'll put some CA glue in all of these joints, all the way around. So I'll go ahead and do that. I don't think I need to put that on camera. Everybody knows how you put CA into a joint. So I'll do that, and then the next process, or the next thing that needs to be done, is we'll come back and we'll start cutting all of these ribs off. Here we have a screenshot of the artwork. Now I'm going to get these decals done at microscale. So the outer rectangle you see on the left-hand side here represents the standard sheet size for microscale. I could make them smaller if I wanted to, but for how much you have to pay for these things, I want to get the most for my money, so I want to fill the sheet up with other things that I might want for other projects. Now you can see at the top that the demonstrator decals are done. Now if you're wondering what the pink layer is, that's the clear carrier that they put the color over. That's considered a color at microscale, so you're paying for each color, so that's considered a color. Please disregard all the other stuff. It's just projects that I'm working on. The Ko&G decals will actually go to highball graphics. I don't need 250 sheets of Ko&G, so I'll put enough on for 5 cars. So in the next shot, you'll see the demonstrator decals up close. So here we have a close-up screenshot of the demonstrator decals. Disregard the red placards, that's for another project, but I had the room there to put them in, so you stuff everything in where you can. But like I say, here you get a better look. I did test these out. They fit properly, proportionally they look right, scale they look right, and I'm very confident that when I get them in, they will do what they need to do. Now I have all these GMs on there because I need a little bit of compromise possibly. The one on the left is the one I scaled off the prototype drawing. The one next to it is the same as the one on the left, but with just individual letters. So if I have to move them around a little bit, I can do that. The other two are just slightly larger than each other. So it gives me some wiggle room if I need something else. Now you'll notice that I only have one of each decal on the sheet. That is because I use 2 sheets to finish the model. When your minimum order at microscale is 250 sheets. So I can maximize the pages or the sheets by only putting one side of a model on a sheet. And then like I said, you just use 2 sheets and you get it done. So that's why you only see one side here. The logo, that was a chore. I had to use I bought the one from Rail Fonts. It just wasn't quite right, and I was not happy with it at all. So I used it as a guide, but I built my own using the Rail Font as a guide and the prototype photos as a reference, and it turned out, I think, to be really, really nice. I'm really happy with the design of the logo. So there you have it. That's what the decals look like.